Hey everyone, before we get started with the Lost episode, I want to take a minute and explain why we're calling this the Lost episode. The day after we recorded this podcast, we found out that Vox Media made the decision to shut down the SB Nation podcast network as of March 1st. So we've had this episode in the can for about 3 weeks while we decided what to do next. And what we decided is we're going to keep doing this. We are going to take West by Pod. It's going to be a flagship show on the West by Pod network. We're going to have more details on that as we get closer to spring, but we wanted to go ahead and get this feed set up so everybody had time to update their podcast subscriptions. That way we didn't miss anything moving forward. We'll have more updates as we get closer to spring, so stay tuned. But for now, enjoy the Lost episode.
We are live.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of West by Pod, podcast about WVU sports, the new Big 12 conference, and eternal optimism for next season. I'm Joel Bracken. I'm joined by a bunch of all-stars today. We got Jordan Pinto, as always, and we're also joined by Jake Lance and Andy Facemeyer, all repping Smoking Musket. So in today's pod, we're going to talk a little bit about the release of the new West Virginia football schedule for 2023. Some initial reactions, thoughts, and just sort of what we can expect with the way the schedule is going to be shaking out. I think we'll also talk a little bit of basketball towards the end of the pod. But yeah, so let's just jump right in. So, the 2023 football schedule came out. Obviously, a lot of new changes this year. So we have 4 new teams in the Big 12 and also some pretty significant non-conference games. So, Jordan, I'll start with you. What were your initial thoughts with this schedule release?
You have the 11P5 teams, so it's always going to look a little daunting from that perspective. I think the first month is particularly brutal. You got Penn State opener. That's not ideal. But if we can sneak a few wins in that first month, first five games, maybe the back half of the schedule really does set up, I think, kind of nicely for us. I don't think there's a winnable or an unwinnable game in those last 6. You flinch at first, but really I think that it could have been a lot worse, I guess is my initial take.
Yeah. So Jake, what about you? What are you thinking with this schedule lining out?
The first thing that popped in my head was, holy crap, this thing's going to be hard. Every single team outside of Duquesne made a bowl last year.
Wow.
Every single team outside of Oklahoma and Baylor had a winning record last year. I don't know that we've ever played a tougher schedule. And right in the middle of it is a game at Houston. I know everyone's going to kind of say it doesn't matter or whatnot. I guarantee you that's a game that's circled on the schedule and, may or may not be a make or break game for us. So I'm really curious to see how this season plays out because you have Penn State who's, went 13-2 or 11-2, and you have TCU. Every team on the schedule was in a bowl game last year, and that there's no week off. It's just every single game is going to be a slug.
That's an insane stat. That the only schools on your schedule that didn't make a bowl were Oklahoma and Baylor.
No, they made a bowl. They made a bowl.
That's my gosh.
Every team made a bowl except Duquesne.
Okay. That's showing the depth of our schedule and the depth of the conference. Andy, what about you? What are you feeling about the outlook on the 2023 football campaign?
Wait, I think it's a schedule that that WVU got everything we would have asked from the conference out of this. If you look at what we would have as a school asked for with this conference, we probably got almost everything we wished for. You get a trip to Central Florida, which is great for recruiting. You don't have a home Thursday night game, which I'll talk about that more when we get to the Houston game. but yeah, I mean, it's a tough schedule because we're addicted to having 11 conference games and asking 11 Power 5 conference games and asking someone in their second year to play play 11 I kid, but of all the things, just as an aside, of all the things that he could have said as like an excuse for like the record, the one thing he didn't comment on is like how we have not helped at all with our scheduling. So like I'm going to continue to say that you shouldn't schedule 11 Power 5 games. You just should not do that. If you were Alabama, I guess you could get away with it, but Alabama's not going to do that for obvious reasons because Nick Saban's not an idiot. But so yeah, I think it's a good schedule. I think for our fans in particular, there's a lot of great games on there. There's the Penn State game, the Pitt game, also Cincinnati. That's a game, that. It's someone a little closer. BYU brings a little bit of variety to the schedule. So I think it's a good schedule. I think it's certainly, from an entertainment perspective, a really good schedule. I think and like I said, I think if we were asking the conference to give us a schedule, this is more or less what we would have asked for. We didn't, and we're not going to get like our skulls dragged in by both the Kansases again. So
yeah,
Dodge Texas too. I think Texas probably opens the season as the conference favorite, right? So
maybe. I mean, I'm
one of the
hesitant,
two,
hesitant to ever like. Yeah, I have a whole theory on Texas and why they will never be good, but that's a different pod.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to the schedule, I think it's a funny thing because in a way it's like a reflection of West Virginia's position in Power 5 football or college football in general. So we miss these rivalries, so we chase them in our non-conference schedule, and then every year. There's this stat at the beginning of the year that there's like, there's only 5 teams who play 11 Power 5 teams. We're that team every year, and it's been for several years now that we're playing Maryland and Virginia Tech and and Pitt, and now we're playing Penn State. We got Bama coming up in a couple years, and it's like we're chasing these meaningful games. We also get the 4 new teams to the conference, and like you were saying, Andy, about the the scheduling as part of the record. Yeah, we're not in the best shape as a football program right now either. So we're if you want to say the opportunity is in front of us, that's totally true, because you want to go out and prove yourself. You have 11 chances. That's as many or more than almost any other team in the country. Unfortunately, some of these chances, including the ones that are, I guess, somewhat voluntary, Penn State and Pitt, these are tough games. These are games you don't want to open your season with if you have, new guys filling in positions, whatnot. So it's a brutal schedule. I mean, you have 11 Power 5 is all you got to say.
I did a little bit. I was talking with someone else, and I did a little bit of a dive into years in which WVU has opened on the road in non-conference, and I think we've won like true non-conference road games as an opener, like maybe twice in 40 years.
Yeah,
and every time we have done it, we have not had a winning season. Not even talking like Power 5. Like, I think some people in the call are old enough to remember Mark Bulger's team going down to East Carolina and getting whipped in the opener that year. So it's just like I don't understand what the thought process was. I mean, like I just looked. The next year we have Pitt and Penn State again and some FCS team. Who is it? Albany. And then 2025, we have a road trip to Ohio and Pitt at home. And then Robert Morris. So that's like, I think the only year for like...
Just national championship year, baby. Junior Nico, Rodney Gallagher, the boys. We're just 2025. We're rolling, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, like, the thing that for West Virginia is, and why this, just background of why they thought we needed to have these kind of like brutal schedules was like, if you remember, TCU and Baylor got screwed out of the playoff, right? And so the whole notion, or out of the like, what I forget at the exact time we started having the playoffs, but the point was that like they thought that we needed to have a stronger schedule. Well, with a 12-team playoff, you don't need to worry about that. If you were in the Big 12 and you are 11-1, 10-2, if you win the Big 12, the newly aligned Big 12, you're still going to be in the playoff. Like, you're not going to have to worry. So like having to like murder yourself with these schedules is just it's pointless. So
just to add to that, you can blame West Virginia for it because what Andy's referring to is in 2014 we beat Baylor. Baylor beat TCU. They both went 11-1. There wasn't a conference championship game. Ohio State got in because they waxed Wisconsin, and they had to choose between a 13-1 or 12-1 team and an 11-1 team, and they used the extra data point, as I put up my air quotes, and that's why the Big 12 got screwed out of that one. So,
which never mattered ever again. They never used that extra data point to matter ever again. In fact, this year they pointedly ignored extra data points to put TCU and Ohio State still in the title game or in the playoff, even though they had both lost. Ohio State didn't even play in the playoff game in a championship game because they got waxed by Michigan at home, which like that should have.
You would not be suggesting that the playoff committee makes up the rules as they go, Andy.
Surely
each
not.
Week. Each week they make them up each week. They're worse than the. I say this every year. They're worse than the NCAA selection committee. At least the selection committee nominally uses the same criteria for the whole season. Whereas the playoff committee, they just like each week it's like, well, we decided that we thought that win that an SEC team had was really good.
Right.
We thought that was really good, and we thought Notre Dame showed us some real potential. Freaking year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we digress. Digress.
That's fun. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the obviously the West Virginia has set themselves up. I mean, this is somewhat voluntary to have this out of conference schedule that we do have 11 Power 5 teams. So let's sort of walk through the schedule a little bit, in some segments here. So I think like the first, natural segment to look at is the non-conference. So the first 3 weeks of the season, opening at Penn State, then you have, Duquesne the following week. That should be, somewhat of a layup. And then the next week with Pitt at home. So, what is your sort of outlook on that first 3 weeks of the season? And, potentially like what could it show us? What could it tell us about coaching potential things? What are you looking for in those first couple weeks?
I can go first, and I'll say I think that the Neil Brown era is probably defined by those 3 weeks. I think that it's incredibly likely that by the end of those 3 weeks, we will have a pretty good sense on whether or not Neil is going to return or Neil will continue to be the head coach. I think what I have a feeling is going to happen if I were if I were a betting man, which I'm not. I'm like the only non-degenerate in the smoking musket snap. I feel like, but like if I were a betting man, what I would venture a guess is that we get a Neil Brown close game special with Penn State, where we go into halftime with like 10-3, and then in the second half, Penn State runs the ball for 350 yards or something because they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback, but they have 2 excellent running backs.
Yeah,
they have 2 excellent running backs, a good defensive line, good offensive line. So I think that like Penn State will win that game comfortably. The question just is it one of those games where you're like, oh, if just this play had gone this way, or like, I think that's the big question. I don't think he needs to beat Penn State. I mean, we've beaten Penn State 9 times total. Don Nealon, I think, is the only person with two wins against Penn State. Like that's like it's a history, right? So I don't think he has to beat Penn State. I would prefer it to like not be like a complete, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if we get out of there, like you're saying, where, it was the kind of game where we can point to a player or two, like the Pitt game last year to open the season, if it's a similar kind of thing where it's like, man, it was right there and we just kind of shat the bed. That's, I'll take that and run out of Happy Valley. Because like you said, I mean, they have the best running back 1-2 punch that will play, I think. Lots of capital D dudes back on defense. I think they lose Joey Porter Jr., who's probably going to be a first-round draft pick. But other than that, I think if you look at their PFF stuff, most of the top of the charts are back. I think, I mean, I don't know, Joel, Jake, I mean, you guys, like, we don't have to win that game. We gotta look respectable, I think.
Yeah, I would say for the non-conference, Penn State is kind of more of you're looking at the team. You're who's the quarterback? Is it Nico or is it Garrett? And how are they used? And how does the team play? I don't know that needs to be a win. I think if Neal is going to save his job, you have to go 2-1, which means you've got to beat Duquesne and you've got to beat Pitt at home. I do think it's interesting, and we'll kind of get into it a little bit more, but Penn State is breaking in a new quarterback.
Yep.
Pitt is breaking in a new quarterback. We're breaking in a new quarterback. So it'll be really interesting, I think, on the non-conference side to see, okay, well, people are going to show up for Pitt, but if you go 1-2 in non-conference and the apathy that's already throughout this fan base and throughout Morgantown, if how much lower can it be? And if you can't win those games and then you start looking at this Big 12 schedule, how many fans are going to start showing up because you got a lot of home games early and then you go on the road for a bit. And then, at that point, is the season over for everybody? And you're looking at 35,000, 40,000 in the stands for late October, November games.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I feel. I mean, just for the reference, the last time we beat Penn State at University Park. God, I've been there. The last time we beat them at College Park was 1954.
Wow.
Yep, one of the 9 wins.
Jake, you were there for that, weren't you?
Y'all hurt me.
No, but I think that's. I think you're straight on, Jake. I think that if you don't beat Pitt, or at least have a last minute kind of operation. Although to me, that's the whole problem. Is that like the whole 4 years now of
it's year 2, sorry.
Yeah. God. I still cannot. When I heard him say that, I was floored. I've always thought really highly of Shane and never thought he was an idiot. But
Same.
like that was just to me just like one of the I could not fathom that.
Same. It was a world shaking comment, like a worldview shaking comment.
Right, yeah. I mean, and I've been pretty open about like how I feel about, the situation, but just my God. But yeah, I think that like the problem has been we're close but never there, and that works in hand grenades. And ultimately you've got to be able to show some product.
So would we say that, in terms of season outlook, is Penn State it's not actually, but like in a kind of a perverse way, it's the least important non-conference game, right? Because we're kind of expecting a loss there. Really what we need is to win the next 2.
I think so. I think Penn State is an assumed loss because, you're thinking this is a top 10 or top 15 team, and West Virginia clearly is not in that realm right now. So I don't think there's any expectations of a win. You go in there and you try not to, you save face and show that there's some promise. But, the scheduling issue aside, I'm sure this isn't the opening Neil wants to the season, and I'm sure he doesn't want
He
doesn't want these, but it is what it is, and you got to find a way. If you want to be somewhat of a serious football program, you got to find a way to win one of the two against the Pennsylvania teams.
Yep. All right. Should we let's get into what do we do? Should we just do those next three?
Yeah, so I think there's like a natural progression here. So we see the non-con, and then there's two games next that are the first two conference games that approach a bye. And I think that is important because, I mean, I don't think it's a secret that Neil Brown's job is not like safe and sound at this point. So there is the possibility of a almost 2 full week gap where some kind of change could be in the works. So, we talked about the non-con. We have Penn State, Duquesne, then versus Pitt. You open up the conference at home versus Texas Tech. This is an improving team that has shown that sometimes new coaches can work out. And the following week, you go to TCU, who clearly has demonstrated the process of you can put a new coach out there and things might just go all right. So, how important are those two games following up the non-conference?
I would say Texas Tech is maybe on the first half of the schedule, maybe the most important, because if you go 1-2, you got to win that game. If you go 2-1, you can get to 3-1, and that kind of subsides, and you can probably get to the end of the season. It's a team he's never beat, so you can kind of check that box there. It also is maybe the easiest of the first half games in terms of player emotion and fan emotion. It's just one of those where hey, you can kind of build some momentum there. So if you can win that game, you either get to 500 or you get 2 games above 500, depending on what you do with Pitt. And then, whatever happens with TCU isn't really as big a deal. That also said, that game follows that's the second of your 3 home games. So, best case scenario, it's the third of your 3 home games. So,
third, yeah.
So, you beat Duquesne, maybe you get rolling, you beat Pitt, and you beat Texas Tech. That's a 3-game home winning streak. That does a lot for the fan base as well, because now you're about to go on the road for a while. You don't come home for a month. So getting wins at home is always important. So I think Texas Tech is kind of that one where if Pitt is going to determine whether or not Neil's going to really save his job, Texas Tech is that one. I think you're really going to have an idea there. Is this team going to be able to compete, or are we flushing this entire season down the toilet? Because it's going to be really easy to go 1-3 or 3-1. You can kind of talk yourself into any of those scenarios there. And 1-3, 3-1. You win 3 home games. The fan base is more excited, more energetic. They're starting to get back on the climb a little bit. You go 1-3, and you're 4 games into the season, and you're done. You got 8 games left, and no one's caring anymore.
Yeah.
Did we ever stop climbing, Jake?
I haven't seen that. I have not seen that. I've been trying to figure out where that came from, because it never felt like something like that anybody that I know within athletics would have came up with. They're a lot more clever than that, I feel like. I haven't heard a thing about the climb since Shane left.
Yeah, I wonder if that's
and I am now left to once more conclude that Shane came up with that and just be like,
I still see some recruits tweeting about it, but yeah, it's not plastered all over my social media feed like it has been these last 4 years. Yeah, Jake, I had exactly the same notes about that Tech game. I think it's the most important game on the first half of this. Well, has the potential to be the most important game on the first half. Pitt is obviously the most important game on the first half of the schedule, but of the conference slate, that's the one where it's a swing game in the season, right? You win that one, you're either back at 500, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, well, not best case scenario, but maybe, I don't know, B+ case scenario. You're 3-1 and you're rolling into TCU. You buy a little bit of goodwill. TCU, I kind of felt like they pulled 12-0 out of their ass last year. They got exposed a little bit in the championship game.
A little bit.
Yeah, a slight exposure. Yeah, and man, being at that TCU game last year, I didn't feel like that was like an unbeatable football team. We weren't good last year, and we had every chance of winning that game down the stretch. We just didn't do it. And they lose like all of the explosiveness. They bring back so Chandler Morris will start, and people forget that he started the season for him last year and then got hurt in the first game, and then Max Duggan came in and did what he did. So they'll have Chandler Morris back, but like all the rest of their good players on offense are gone. They'll have some defensive guys back, but nothing from last year made me feel like that's an unbeatable football team. So say the best case scenario happens, we start out, we beat Pitt, we come back, we beat Texas Tech. Going down to TCU, I don't feel like that's an unwinnable game. If we're on a little bit of a roll there. So I don't know. Yeah, I feel like if you split those Texas teams, preferably you win the home game and lose the road game, just for the fans' sake, like you said. But go ahead.
I have a very cut and dry question for all you guys. If we go into the bye week 2-3, assuming one of those wins is Duquesne, and you only win one of your 3 games, is Neil the coach moving forward to Houston, which is the first game after the bye?
I think so.
Yeah.
So we have never fired a coach midseason. We've never done that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think our fans are a little bit spoiled in the fact that in my lifetime we've had 4 head coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Colorado has had that in like 5 years. God,
y'all making me feel old.
So I think we've been pretty lucky in that. I think that if they're 2-3, if the permutation matters, but my feeling is that if you leave September 1-3, if you lose that Texas Tech game, I can't see you beating TCU on the road and going in. And I think if you're like 1-5 at that point, or 1-4, 1-4. I think if you're 1-5, I can do math. I promise. No, 1-4.
1-4.
I can do math. I can do math. I promise. I have a degree. I have a journalism degree, folks. Which means I cannot do math. I think if you're 1-4. I think that's a different conversation. I think if you're 1-4, I think, and I think I heard some people who are like, oh well, WV, it's always the same old, blah 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 blah. Nothing changes. If you have paying attention to what Rin has done in his first month, the Larry Harrison situation should basically just tell you that if Neil is 1-4, he will not survive. He will not survive. He may get to the end of the season as the head coach, but that's just because they didn't want to fire him in the middle of the season. That's the only thing that I can plausibly imagine. Yeah, so I think that sweep there of Texas Tech and TCU is going to be really, really important to his career. Mm-hmm. To the season. I don't think, because larger picture too, I think you look at that Texas Tech game, if you fall to let's say you're 2-1, 2-2 is okay, you can get through that 2-2, but you've got to win 2 games coming out of October, because if you're at 1-3, there is no way in hell you're going to get enough games to get bowl eligible.
No.
Yeah. So
just not going to happen.
I would say the only way Neil's fired before Houston is if he's 0-5, and that means that you lost to Duquesne.
I think if you lost to Duquesne, he's probably fired.
I
think he's walking across the street to the hospital because something terrible has happened.
I'm not prepared to consider that scenario.
So I mean, even at 1-4, he's not fired. Going into Houston. I think the 2-3, he's safe. You beat somebody else other than Duquesne, so you've got a Power 5 win at that point. You're safe. The first thing, so talking about these first 5 games, I'm a big believer in who do you play before, and who does that team play before? And so looking at the schedule, then Texas Tech, when we get to them, they will have played, I think it's like Tarkington or somebody.
The Texas Tech schedule infuriates me.
Right. And
every year.
Now, we are the first game that they play outside of the state of Texas. That may matter to us. We get them at home. They have to travel from Lubbock. It's a long drive. That's good for us. TCU plays SMU. Now, kind of a rivalry game. It's still P5, G5 type thing. So, I think those games are going to be tough. And I think Texas Tech is going to be a tougher game for us than maybe people want to think about. Neil has not beaten them. That needs to be in there. They're also, out of those first 5 games, the only team that brings their quarterback back. So Penn State has a new quarterback. Pitt has a new quarterback. TCU is going to have a new quarterback. Texas Tech doesn't. They've got their same quarterback back. So that kind of goes to that whole point.
The Morton kid, I feel like Texas Tech goes through this sequence of quarterbacks that I can never quite keep up with, because seemingly every time that one of them starts to show promise, they get a lung punctured or something.
So
I mean, we're a cursed team. So
it's really interesting to me when we look at the schedule. The first half of it is really tough. I mean, I think we would all agree it's a really hard first 5 games. The interesting part is that other than Texas Tech, everyone has a new quarterback. So there are some differences there. You get to this back half, it's the opposite. It supposedly is easier, but almost everyone brings their quarterback back. So you've got to find some wins up front in order to kind of supplement the back half. And so I think you can win. I think we can beat Texas Tech, and I think we can beat TCU. Texas Tech is traveling outside of Texas for the first time. TCU was a little bit of a mirage. They were not as good as they probably were. But you've got to find some wins there. And if you can't find those wins there, the schedule, even though it quote unquote gets easier, I don't think it's going to get as easy as maybe, you would hope it would get. So you got to find some wins there. And then we head into this bye week that's not really a bye week.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. So interesting. I do like the way the schedule's set up, but you have your bye week. There's not a full 14 days between games. So you come into a Thursday night game at Houston. And you think of any significance between West Virginia and Houston, especially with coaches on the hot seat. I think this will be a really interesting game because of those things. So, just maybe looking at this next chunk, let's look at just October. So, TCU September 30th, you have this 12-day gap. Then you go to Houston, come back home for Oklahoma State, who is maybe a team that I think the buzz has been a little bit negative around things this offseason. And then you go down to Central Florida. So in October, you're facing two of your 3 games are against new Big 12 opponents. So, what's your outlook in this little chunk of October?
So I think this is a good opportunity for the club, for the team. I think the Houston game, so there's going to be a lot made, I think, in the media and amongst the fan base about that Houston game. My sense is that probably within the locker room, it's probably not as big of a deal. But I think within the media, I think Neil will be aware of that, because I think you'd have to be literally dead to not be aware of the significance of going and playing Dana in Houston. And it'll be a big media game. I'm sure that I mentioned at the start, I am sure that we asked for this for if we were going to be forced into a Thursday night game, that we were like, can you please not make us play that at home? Because I know the fans kind of like Thursday night games. There's all of that feel of a Thursday night game. From an administrative side, the university hates them. Anyone who has lived in Morgantown will tell you how awful a Thursday night game is for just living in the city of Morgantown. It's also just terrible as someone who has worked those games, because you get home at 2 o'clock at night and you're just dead for Friday. So, but I think as far as I think it's a good opportunity. I think Houston is last year's Houston team was like the most Dana team I could imagine. Like they were just all over the place. They were so all over the place. And you had Dana like losing his shit constantly. Just was a very Dana experience. So I'm curious. I think that's a really interesting game. I think Oklahoma State is I think they are in for a rough ride. I think that they have hit that point of like program funk that is not going to be easy to escape in a way that like I was kind of thinking was happening to Clemson until they made a big move for a new offensive coordinator. I think that's another point about TCU. They lost Riley Jr. So that they'll be installing a whole new offense again, although it's Sonny Dykes. So, but I think Oklahoma State's in a lot of trouble. They lost a lot of talent. Spencer Sanders is gone. A couple wide receivers. Their offense was bad. I mean, they were a bad football team last year. They were a bad football team towards the end. Like they were good for about the first 5 weeks,
and then 7-0. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, like they were really good, and then they just collapsed, and that collapse seems to be continuing. So I think that's an interesting game. I think, that's an opportunity, and then I think Central Florida is really interesting. We have not, as a program, actually won a lot of games in the state of Florida. Always been kind of a bugaboo for us actually to go down and we had the great games against South Florida, great games against Miami, rarely won those games. So this is a good opportunity for us to go down to get in front of recruits that we desperately needed to be in front of. And get an opportunity to like get those Florida kids in front of their parents. I think Central Florida should be interesting. That's going to be that's what's his name, Gus.
Malzahn.
Gus Bus.
Malzahn.
Gus Malzahn. They're they kind of underperformed this year though. Like they were supposed to be one of the top teams in the American Conference, and I think they finished like third or fourth. They didn't make
9-5. Yeah,
they didn't make their championship game. So I think they're an interesting team. I think that those are all 3 winnable games. Those are all 3 losable games too.
Yeah.
Like those aren't teams that I think that we're vastly superior than in any way, shape, or form, which is, I think, in itself kind of a statement about where the program is. Because when we joined the Big 12, if you had said, well, I just don't know if we're vastly superior than Central Florida or Houston, you would have gotten laughed out of the room. Yeah. Also, to the point that those programs have really invested. Central Florida and Houston have really invested in their programs. But I think that those are 2 interesting winnable games, and I think we're happy that we're playing them. I would assume that we'll probably have Central Florida in our rotation every year. I would think that's probably going to be there. So I think it's an interesting 3 weeks, but it'll also be really interesting. I mean, can you imagine if you're first? Let's play the game of like we fire Dana. Or we fire Neil into the sun, and your first game as interim head coach is against Dana at Houston.
Yep.
Ugh, woof.
Yeah,
so let's not consider that. Go ahead, Jake.
The interesting thing about this is, everyone kind of looks at it and goes, oh, we have a bye, and then we play Houston. And I'll give credit where it's due. Mike Kazaza pointed this out, so this isn't me being smart. It's not really a bye week because of that Thursday game, because the kid, they're going to have their off week, but game prep now is going to get moved up 2 days. So instead of starting it on Sunday or Monday and going through it, now everything starts on Saturday. So now the kids don't get to go home. They don't get a chance to kind of mentally take a break. They come back. They're going to have 3 or 4 days maybe off, but they got to come back right away and get going again. And then they're going to travel. So, that Houston game I think is really interesting because it's a bye, but it's not. And for Dana, it sets up a little bit better. It's a home game. Those kids can go home. A lot of the idea for him was to get kids within, the Houston metro area. So you would think that those kids can get a little bit of a break. I think Andy's right. I think, fan wise and media wise, it's probably going to get played up more than it will be for the coaches. I would be curious to know the administration side, because you have to think there has to be a little bit of we push this one guy out to get this new guy, and now we're playing him. Did we really make the right choice? Whether or not that is, we'll see. But then going from there, so you go from Houston, and then we finally come back and we've got Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's interesting because they play Kansas before us. And I think that's going to be – I don't think that sets up well for us, because if Kansas is going to be that power option team that they were, that's probably going to be very close to what we are. We're going to be this running two-back team. And so I think that may give Oklahoma State the ability to kind of game plan. Hey, we're playing the same team twice in a row, right? Like it's not fun to play Army middle of the season because, holy crap, they're running this triple option.
I just want to interject. Do you actually think Neil is capable of calling that kind of an offense? Because I don't.
I don't think Neil is capable of calling my son's 11U football team. So, that's a different story. But, I think that's the, if we're going to be that running team that we talk about, because that's what we're kind of set up to be, playing Kansas before us helps Oklahoma State, maybe hurts us a little bit. And then you get UCF, and we should beat UCF. They do return their quarterback. The interesting thing with UCF is they play Oklahoma before us. That's a game that, like, if Texas Tech and Pitt don't break us, you lose to UCF. I think that in and of itself is going to be we're completely done. There's no coming back. I don't care if you run the table at that point, because we've got to be better than UCF. Like Andy said, we're going down to Florida. This is a chance to start kind of getting in front of players and recruits and bringing those guys in. And Oklahoma, I think, is going to be better. They're not going to be the dumpster fire that they were, or they'll be a smaller dumpster fire. So they're probably going to body UCF a little bit. UCF should be hurting. Like, we need to take advantage of that. So, like Andy said, those are winnable games. I can talk myself into a lot of like we could win 8 or 9 games, because I think that we're capable of winning, lots of games. We're also capable of losing lots of games, because we're just not significantly better than any one of these teams that we're talking about.
Yep. Here's an interesting fact about that Oklahoma State game. Mike Gundy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's the 8th winningest coach all time against WVU. The only coach. Here are the coaches who have more wins than him: Joe Paterno, who has 25. Jack Sutherland, who was at Pitt from 1924 to 1938, had 14 wins. Frank Beamer had games. Yeah, Frank Beamer had 12 wins. Charles Rip E. Engel, also at Penn State, had 12 wins. And Ben Schwartzwalder had 11 wins, and Paul Pasqualoni is tied with him with 8 wins. Mike Gundy has more wins against WVU than Pop Warner did.
Jeez.
Wow.
So that's just it's hard to think about that. He's like, I think that's the problem at Oklahoma State. I think he's hit that that point where he's so inflexible about what the program is that they're just and that he's not. I mean, he's an asshole. There's no nice way to say that.
He's a man. He's 40. He's 50 now.
He's 50 something now. That was 10. That was 15 years ago. We're old. We're ancient. But yeah. No. I think you guys were right. It's an interesting series of games. I think to imagine us playing those 3 games. God. Yeah.
3-0, baby.
Yeah, I think if you can get through that, if you're Neil and you are having a Satterfield-like season, right? Coming through that stretch of games 2-1 or 3-0, probably takes any pressure off you for those final 4 games. But someone remind me, Joel, and I think you've said this before, Neil's never won 3 games in a row, has he?
He's never won 3, and I almost brought it up when we were saying the Duquesne Pitt Texas Tech run. He's never won 3 games in a row. Yeah, ever at West Virginia. I'm sure he did it at Troy, but I think the Houston, Oklahoma State, UCF run, if you're going to win 3 in a row and break the streak, I think that's the run to do it. I think if you have a team that's going to compete in this league, those should be teams that you should be able to handle this year. And if not, I mean, then it is what it is. That we are the team that we have been for a few years now. But I think those are the 3, winnable in a stretch to me.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think it's important to prove a point about the future of the program.
Yeah, you got to beat the new boys, right?
Yeah. Like if we're going to
all 4 are beatable this year, we play all 4 of them. Set the marker. Like, okay, look, Oklahoma and Texas are leaving. We're gonna be fine.
Like we were when Miami and Virginia Tech and Boston College left.
Exactly.
Rutgers. God, Jesus.
I just want to say I'm cackling over here because Joel brought that stat up and he completely broke Jordan right there. Jordan just about died when he mentioned that he hadn't won 3 in a row.
It's been like 5 years since we won 3 games in a row.
It's pretty damning about that for a minute, but yeah, I was feeling good about that Pitt Duquesne Tech stretch, and then he says that shit, and it's just Jesus.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's segue to the last month of the season. So November, and I think just something that I noticed in the schedule is you have a run of 4 out of your 6 games in this run are the new 4 teams. So to start November, you play at home against BYU. I know some fans wanted to travel to BYU just because a beautiful place. Other people were like, send us to the West Coast. It's a polarizing thing, but home versus BYU. Then you have to go at Oklahoma. So at Oklahoma the next week, then home versus Cincinnati, which I think is, man, if you could just have a November game that matters, that would be a really fun game. Home versus Cincinnati, second to last week of the season. Just make the season matter to that point. And then your final game is at Baylor on November 25th. So Jordan, I'll start with you. What are you thinking about the final month of the season?
We'll have to see. I have no clue at this point how good Oklahoma and Baylor are going to be. I think that we can beat the 2 new teams. BYU was a solid team last year. They kind of they bring a pretty decent amount back from that team from what I saw. But first time in Morgantown, it's a game that I think that we should expect to win. Oklahoma.
How do you think the BYU fans will adapt to Morgantown?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, no, oil and water. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be a fun trip for them. I don't know. I'm sure
fun. They can have fun anywhere, buddy. I live out here next to these people. They can have fun anywhere. They can find a soda shop. They are have it made in the shade.
Yeah, well, hopefully there's a little bit of culture shock there.
Take them down to Hummers.
Right? But the Oklahoma game, I mean, they should be better in year 2, but I don't see a significant jump back to anywhere approaching the battleship that they were. Still on the road, I don't know if I see us beating them twice in a row. Cincinnati, man, I just have "Oh Baby" written down. Like, I'm just excited to be playing them again. I'm excited to be playing somebody who, I could drive to their stadium in 3 hours. This is something cool about that. I think at this point, we're 2 years removed from the CFP run. It seems like most of the good players from that team are in the NFL now. So I think it's a game that we should expect to win. Spoiler for my season prediction. I think all 6 of the home games are winnable. And so, I expect to win the Cincy. And then Baylor's tough because, like Jake said, they bring the quarterback back. And he's good. I hold him in reasonably high esteem. I think the running back Richard Reese, I think he's really good, but for the second year in a row, they're losing a ton of their high end players. I think the dudes who have power, and I guess we'll see how they've recruited, but the dudes who have powered the offensive line for the last 2 or 3 years are all on their way out. Their two best defensive linemen from last year, I think, are on their way out. So it's hard to say. Like they've been pretty up and down. I think last year they were kind of what I thought they were, and I'm not sure. Going on the road, I think it's winnable, but who knows? I don't know. I think if you come out of that 2-2, you're okay with it. 3-1 is good. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think BYU is an interesting game again because I think that that they're a winnable game. They're a good team. They're always a good football team. They play they know what they are, but they're not gonna. I think they're going to have an adjustment period to the Big 12.
Let me jump in here real quick. The big thing about BYU is they are traveling cross country. I went back,
but they do that a lot. I mean, they
don't. They don't do it as much, like coming this far east. So
that's true.
Every time they've come this far east, we need to hope and pray and pay the Big 12 to make that like a 1:00 game. Anytime that they come this far east and it's a noon 1:00 game, they lose or they are not that good. They lost to Liberty last year when they came to Liberty, and played a 1:00 game. They played somebody else, at a 1:00 game. And middle of the season, I think that's a really big, feather in our hat that if we can get them at a noon 1:00 game and they have to come here, it's a big deal. If that ends up being a later game, I think that changes the story. But right now, when I'm looking at it, I'm going, they have to travel cross country. We're going to play. It's going to be like 10 a.m. their time normal. That's going to throw them off. So that's one of those games that like we should be thinking we're going to win because we've got some advantages coming into that one.
They also play Texas right before us, and I think Texas is, whether they're good or not, I think Texas is going to be a very physical football team.
Yep.
But I think BYU's, it won't be easy, but they're always a good football team. Oklahoma, I agree. I think Oklahoma is going to be a lot better. I think the conference is going to come down to Oklahoma and Kansas State. It's my kind of prediction.
Really?
I think Oklahoma will be probably like a 10-2 kind of football team, and I think Kansas State will continue. I think Kansas State just has it figured out.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's also going to have a new coach who was apparently miserable at Louisville. You've got Satterfield, so they've got a whole new operation. Now by November, they should have a feel for what kind of a team they want to be. Although we're 5 years in, and I'm still not sure. I was hoping we could make that a thing. But yeah, I think that Cincinnati game is big. It's a great opportunity for us to play a game that we had kind of started to turn into a rival. That had started to feel like a rivalry kind of game. And then at Baylor, like I really wish Dave Aranda worked anywhere else. Like, not only because I don't want to have to play him every year, but because I hate Baylor, and I don't think Baylor should exist as a university, let alone get to have good sports. I just think that they're going to always be tough under Dave Aranda. Now, I don't know if they're going to be very good or not. They finished this season... They had a pretty rough ending to the season. They lost their last 4 games. They lost now they did play 3 ranked teams at the end of the season. But they did not look good in their bowl game at all. They looked pretty awful against a tough to play Air Force team. Like, Air Force is a good football team, obviously, but like Air Force was 9-3 or something. If you're a Big 12 team, you should beat Air Force. You shouldn't shouldn't lose like that. So I think Baylor's interesting. I think we'll know a lot more about them though, and you might have to adjust. But I think for sake of the program and looking forward and feeling like you've got a pulse, I think you need to go 2-2 in that series, and I think that's completely I think that's not asking too much. I think you should beat BYU at home, and you should beat Cincinnati at home. Yeah, I mean, Neil does have a win against Oklahoma.
True.
Which is still, I think, one of the most bizarre. Like, if you had told anyone at the beginning of the season that you will lose to a 1-8 in the conference, you will be Iowa State's only conference win, but you will also beat Texas. You will also beat Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, and Baylor, the at the time the Big 12 reigning champs.
Yeah, you'll beat Baylor.
Some bizarre wins.
Some just really bizarre stuff. Yeah, my God.
So just one more question before I guess maybe we'll do a little prediction, but just one more question. Is there any team that you are happy to have dodged or that you will miss playing? So the teams available for that selection would be Texas, of course, Iowa State, rest in peace, the Riot Bowl. We got Kansas State and Kansas, both of which had our number last year. So anybody that you have strong feelings about, which is just a testament to us in the Big 12, are you going to miss them or are you happy to dodge them? Is there any team that stands out?
I am super glad that we dodged Texas. I know Andy said Oklahoma and Kansas State. I think Texas has the potential to be, that third team in there. And whether or not they go 8-5 and pull a Texas, I think they're going to be very physical. And I'm glad that we're not going to be having to deal with them. I'm going to miss Iowa State. I always enjoy that rivalry. I always enjoy talking trash to their site people and enjoying that. It's a fun rivalry. We kind of get each other. I'd also say I'm glad to miss Kansas State. I agree with Andy. I think they're going to be really good. So, we missed probably two of the three best teams in the league. Andy said earlier, this is probably the best schedule we could have hoped for. I think if we could have replaced Oklahoma with Iowa State, that'd be great. But you kind of need one of the two blue bloods on your schedule. So, yeah, I would agree that, or I would say, glad to miss Texas, and going to miss Iowa State for a year.
Yeah, I think I would echo most of that. I would say glad to dodge Texas, glad to dodge Kansas State, Iowa State. I'm indifferent. They always have these weird teams, so I'm happy to not play that game. The one I'm kind of pissed that we missed out on is Kansas, because I thought last year was some bullshit. We were the guinea pig for that bullshit triple option, and by bullshit I mean beautiful, gorgeous. I hope we replicate it. Triple option offense. And I really do feel like if we had caught them later in the year, even if Jalen Daniels had been healthy, when there had been some film out on what they were going to do, we still beat that team. And I'm kind of bummed that we don't get the chance to have revenge on them this year, because again, I think we would have beat them last year if we hadn't been patient zero.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's eminently fair. I mean, we should have still won that game. Like, that's
correct. Correct. Yeah. No doubt.
Let's be fair there. But I think for me, I'm glad that we dodged Kansas State, because I just feel like Kansas State's a game. I don't know. Can they just bring Ron Prince back? Can they do that for me? Because otherwise, I just don't want anything to do with them. I think it's a hard game to play, and they're just always physical. They're always just like this irritatingly good team, too. It's also, they're irritatingly good because there's no reason that we can't be the same level of irritating and good that Kansas State is. There is no reason that our program can't have that level of success. We have better facilities. We're not in the middle of fucking Kansas. Ooh, Manhattan. Jesus Christ. Any of you ever been to Manhattan?
No.
Driven past, but not been in.
There's not a lot there.
Yeah.
I say that with all due respect to the people of Manhattan, Kansas. I'm indifferent about Texas. I mean, I enjoy beating Texas. I don't like to lose to Texas. I do really enjoy beating Texas, but I'm going to enjoy watching Texas lose a lot in the SEC. So it's going to be a great ride for some Schadenfreude. But yeah, I think I would say if I enjoy the Iowa State game for the same reasons Jake does. It's a little bit of nice banter. It felt like the only thing that we had remotely close to a rivalry game, like that could like fit into that like box. So like in a way, it's a little bit of like ah, but I'm perfectly okay not having to deal with Matt Campbell again, and whatever nonsense that they have decided to do to us this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think mostly echo. I mean, like the Texas is like that's fun to win, but losing it is whatever. Iowa State, I never felt any way about. Kansas State and Kansas, I'd rather just dodge at this point, especially Kansas State. Yeah, I like our schedule. It's at least interesting. There's opportunity for sure. You get 4 new teams in conference, 2 meaningful out of conference games. Like there is opportunity. You can't say that the chance is not in front of this team if it can seize the moment. And I guess that sort of is a good, lead into somewhat of a prediction, and maybe we should all give like a floor ceiling and just a real quick explanation of why. So 2023 West Virginia Mountaineers, what are we thinking a reasonable floor and a reasonable ceiling is given this schedule? Anybody is welcome to hop up first.
So I'll do this. I kind of sat down before this and actually looked at the schedule, kind of came up with an idea. I think the floor is, and I'm going to benefit Neil. I think the floor is 5-7. I think that you've got the 4 new teams, and I think you can, potentially go 3-1 with those teams. You've got a pretty decent home slate with Texas Tech and Oklahoma State and BYU. So, the floor I think is 5-7. Neil has kind of proved he has the ability to muck up games and slow them down. And, they're not pretty by any means, but we have the ability to kind of keep them close and we pull 1 or 2 out. So I think 5-7 is the floor. I think if things go right, I can easily talk myself into 8 or 9 wins. You get on a roll here. We've been close. We've won 2 in a row multiple times. It's just getting that third one. So, if you get that third one, it's kind of like what I always go back to the Lou Brown quote from Major League. You win one today, that's a win. You win one tomorrow, that's 2 in a row. You win one after that, that's called a winning streak. It has happened before. And I think, it's one of those things where if you can get some momentum going, things can go right. And, Jordan and I have been saying for the last 4 years, we've kind of stepped on the rake and stepped in the dog shit and, slipped in the puddle and found the banana peels. At some point, the other teams have to do it and we have to avoid it at some point. And,
it has to flip.
If we can do that, I can easily talk myself into 9 wins. I think a lot of these games are toss-ups, and, that means we should win. They're going to be 50-50, 60-40 games a lot of times, at least, kind of looking at it, because teams don't have their quarterbacks or they're making a long trip or whatever. But, we need to stop being such coin flip games. And I think, you kind of get on a roll, that you saw it last year where FPI would have us at one point, we were never going to win another game. And then we won one, and all of a sudden FPI switched and we were, now we're kind of favored, and we're favored in a game we shouldn't be. So I've kind of got our floor at 5-7, and I can easily talk myself into 8-4.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't see us winning fewer than 5. I feel like a very reasonable bar would be 7. And then if, like you said, some things go right, you win 8, 9. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect, like you said, 3-1 against the new teams. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect 4-0 against the new teams. There's the transition factor. Cincinnati's got a new coach coming in. Houston is rebuilding. BYU is the one where there's a little bit of stability there. Like Andy was saying, they have an identity. I think they bring a good bit of people back from the team last year. That would be the one that I would have my eye on. UCF, I don't see why we can't beat UCF. Oklahoma State's in shambles. Duquesne's a win. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I would see the floor at 5, maybe as many as 8 or 9.
So I will be the odd man out of the two, and I say this with love to the university. To none of us want to see. We all want. I think the listeners understand. We all want the program to succeed. I have never felt this negative about a WVU football team. Maybe the last year of Bill Stewart's.
Which we probably went 9-4.
Which we went 9-4. We promptly went 9-4, which sounds great now. Kill for 9-4 now. But 9-4 that year was 9-4 that year though was like actually a big freaking like disaster. Like it took actual disaster level coaching to get that team to lose those games. But I think for me, I think the floor is honestly like 2 wins. Like I just think that the psyche of this team is going to be really fragile, I feel like, in a way that we haven't seen for a while. And it just feels like to me that things are either just going to like fall apart. Like we're at that point where it's either just going to be an unmitigated disaster of a season and Neil gets fired and we all get to move on with our lives, or it's going to be like a 7 or 8 wins. I think there's a really low floor to next year, but I think the ceiling is about where you all think it is. I think the ceiling is 8, 9, regular season wins. I can't see us coming up with 10 wins just because of how difficult that schedule really is. But I'm just really afraid that if they lose that Pitt game, that they're just not going to ever be able to like get it back together in a way that doesn't end with just collapse. And I might be wrong. I will be happy to be wrong about that.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to be wrong about that. But that's just my inner sense of like pessimism, and I'm usually the optimist, I feel like. We could talk about basketball where hope always springs eternal. But yeah, I think that my real worry is that the vibes. I've become like a believer in the vibes theory of sports, and that I just feel like the vibes are gonna turn south in a hurry if you don't win. If you don't beat Pitt and you don't beat Texas Tech and you go into TCU at 1-4 or 1-3 going into TCU, I think the vibes are just going to go south in a hurry, and they're not going to recover.
Yeah, and I think so. In my floor ceiling kind of estimation here, I'm maybe somewhere between Andy and Jordan and Jake. So, I do think that some optimism can be propped up on stilts. And if you want to say Pitt and Texas Tech both are 50-50 games, there's a 25% chance you lose both of them. And I think if that happens, there is a dark path that this season could go down. I think that is a possibility. I mean, I think that has happened. That could happen, and this could be a 3-4 win team. I don't think 2, but I say like somewhere between 3 and 4 is a floor. I also think, let's talk a little positive. So you have 6 home games, and I think, Jordan, you were right. I think these are all very winnable home games. I mean, Duquesne should be put down in Penn already. Pitt, that's winnable. Texas Tech is winnable. I mean, these are both like coin flip games. Oklahoma State, winnable. BYU is winnable. Cincinnati is winnable. Those are your 6 home games. Like, I think you could say you have a fighter's chance in any of those 6 games. You go out and get 1 or 2 more, maybe 3 more. I think you could see this team at 8 or 9 wins. I think the variance is high. I think maybe after Pitt and Texas Tech, I would be comfortable to make a more reasonable analysis of like, okay, Pitt and Texas Tech are probably 2 teams that are somewhere, within a reach of where we're maybe expecting to be. Hopefully we're better than both of them, but that'll be their measuring stick. I think through the first 4 games, we'll know a lot, especially in game 3 and 4. I don't know how much we learn in game 1 and 2. Penn State and Duquesne, you might get blasted and then you might blast a terrible team. I don't know what kind of information we get out of that. But games 3 and 4, I think, are our measuring stick for the season. I see 12-0, a Big 12 championship, and then, I think it ends up 15-0, but who knows? It can go a lot of ways. And, I would kill for 9-4 right now. That'd be awesome for that to be a disaster season. All right, so we've already we kind of talked through our football season. So in 30 seconds or less each, you got 9 games left on the Big 12 conference basketball schedule. Do you think this team is making the tournament? Right now, we're sitting at a 13-9, a very cursed record. If you win your home games and lose your away games, you're 18-13. I think that gets you into the tournament. This conference is just insane. I mean, what do you guys think? Is there a chance to play our way in here?
I think they will not make the tournament, despite the fact that they should. I think the record, it's going to be one of those where they look at the record and they go, we can't put this team in with that record. But you look at it and say, if we played literally in any other conference, we would be a top 15 team. So I don't think they make it, though I think they absolutely deserve to.
Yeah, that's a brutal take. I think they do make it. I think we get to 6-12 in the conference. I think that gets us to 17, and then maybe we win one game in the tournament, so 18. And I think that with that, considering just how hard this damn conference is, considering how we performed against some very good teams in our invitational tournament earlier this year, considering that we smacked Auburn, who was a top 15 team at the time, I think the body of work, we're probably I'm literally of the opinion that we're like maybe the 8th best team in our conference, but we're like a top 25 or 30 team in the country. So I think that if we continue to play like that, if Stevenson can sort his shit out for at least half of our games, then I think we make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be that team that slips in at 18-13, and that some mid-major is going to be very upset. Somebody who lost their conference tournament game, like a College of Charleston, one of the MWC teams, or like if AFU were to lose their conference tournament. I think one of those teams is gonna get, I won't say screwed, because I think we're deserving. I think if we win 18 games with this schedule, I think we're probably deserving. I think we can get to it too. I mean, I think we've got to win Sunday against Oklahoma. I think we have to have that game. You've got to have your home games. It'd be nice if you could slip a road game, but the road games at this point are at Texas, at Baylor, at Kansas, and at Iowa State. Those are all houses of absolute fucking horrors for us historically. So, which is another reason why I'm happy we're not playing Kansas again, because I get to lose to Kansas twice a year already. 3 times is too much. So yeah, I think you win your home games, you slip one in the conference tournament game. I think we're in. And I think we're a tough 11 seed. I think we are an 11 seed that no one wants to play.
You don't want to be at the mid-major 6 who plays us as an 11. That's just hell. But so just some quick numbers. We have not lost to a team at home that is not in the top 15 in KenPom, which is absurd. We have not lost to a team, period, who is not inside the top 45 in KenPom. Once again, absurd. We got 9 games left, 5 of them at home. Every team we play, I mean, this conference is just like this, but we play number 44, number 18, 64, 31, and 24. So Iowa State is number 18. That's the best team we play at home. KenPom says we're winning all 5 of them. Our away games, not as great. Number 10, Texas. Number 14, Baylor. Number 9, Kansas. Number 18, Iowa State. So KenPom says we're going to win all 5 home and lose all 4 away. That would get us to 18-13, 7-11 in the conference. I think if that happens, we are in. I'm cautious to say if I am making a prediction, I think we finish one game worse than that, and we're like that last 4 team out, and we finish like top 30 or 35 in Ken Palm, which is just like complete absurdity of this conference. But yeah, if we slip in as an 11, I feel bad for like Mount St. Mary's or whatever poor mid-major slips in as a 6 and is having like a nice big season in program history. Because
Like
here's something for you to imagine,
or something like that.
As if we're in the last 4, then we're going to play in Dayton. And imagine
I'll be there
playing like Ohio State. I want you to just imagine playing Ohio State in Dayton.
As someone living in Columbus, I will drive the 45 down the road and be supportive. But yeah, no, that is honestly a very real possibility. Like we might sit right on that line. And the funny thing is, like I said, I mean, as I literally just refreshed Ken Palm, we moved from 19 to 18. So we're sitting at 18 at time of recording, and there are teams, you know, like Ohio State is 32. There are plenty of teams that are going to get in who are, you know, Florida's had a big win last night against number 2 in the country. Miami is 37, 17-5. There are teams with much better records who this math does not say are nearly as good as us, which is just, you know, the absurdity of this conference. So I hope we find a way in. I think this team, as well as like 9 others in this conference, could make a run in March. That's just like the league we play in.
I mean, I think that this is going to be I think it's going to be a poorly seeded tournament again this year, which means a lot of upsets. I think you're also going to see a pretty wide open tournament because to me there is only one team that I don't have concerns about,
Purdue,
and that's Purdue.
Yep.
But I think all of the other good teams are like, I think Alabama is very capable of being a Final Four type of team. I think Alabama is also a very capable team of losing in the second round, like right now. And Lunardi is good at picking, like, just an aside, Lunardi is really good at figuring out who's going to be in the tournament. Lunardi is freaking awful at picking where people are going to be and what seed line they're on. But like he has, if I were Alabama and I got North Carolina and Northwestern, like either of those teams, like that's who he has, I would be mortified. I want nothing to do with either of those teams in the second round. Yeah, so. And for West Virginia purposes, there are some really terrible matchups that we can get screwed with. We could get to play a North Carolina team in Greensboro. I'm fully expecting us to have some nonsense where we play Gonzaga.
Is John Calipari still coaching? Are we going to get him in the second round again?
We could be, we could actually
make the tournament.
Oh God, no! It's Kentucky, West Virginia as 11s in Dayton. They would do that to us. They would do that because that would be like a huge Dayton game to get Kentucky and West Virginia in Dayton for a first 4. That would be. I don't want to speak that further into existence.
All right, so last one, I guess. Quick prediction. Give us a season prediction, Jordan.
For basketball?
Football.
Oh, sorry. I thought So I think 7-5. 7-5 feels realistic.
Joel.
I think Vegas will set the line at 5.5. I think we'll go 7-5 as well.
Andy.
4-8 and a new head coach.
Gross.
All right, I've got us at 5-7. So Joel and Jordan. So if you're at 7-5, does that save Neil's job?
They don't pay me enough to answer that question.
Yeah.
You get paid to do this?
I feel like these predictions are very on brand. Joel and I were on the climb as long as anybody, and Andy and Jake were ready to fire Neil after Texas last year, I think. So,
okay, so similar to my basketball prediction
game, I think that's when. But when broke me? Do you know when Neil broke me? Was that bowl game against Minnesota? I have never been more miserable.
Oh, that was the worst game. Yeah, it's the worst game of
my entire life, and sitting through like. it was like having a nail shoved. What I imagine a nail shoved into your penis is like. Like that's how fucking painful that game was.
Yeah.
My prediction will be similar to the basketball, is that we will be like in that purgatory of like 7-5, and we shouldn't bring Neil back, but we like will. That's what'll happen.
Can't wait.
I mean, I'm relatively convinced that the reason why they didn't fire Neil this year was that they didn't want to make Ren's first job. Like, first thing that Ren does is pay someone $20 million to not work for the university.
Yeah.
Like, I'm firmly convinced that was the case.
Yeah. So my thoughts are, I think 7-5 will save him because he hasn't won 7 before. He hasn't gone 7-5. In order to go 7-5, you have to win 3 in a row. I mean, I guess technically you can go.
No, you don't have to, and he won't.
I mean, I guess you can get, well, to go. No, I guess you technically don't. But
2 in a row at once.
but I think 6-6 is the break line. I think if you go 6-6, you've stagnated. You've gone 5 years of being where you are. So I think if he can get that 7th win in the regular season, he comes back. It's that and that may come down to needing to beat Baylor, beating UC and then needing to beat Baylor to do that. So I think that's probably the most curious thing I'm watching this year is, okay, what are we going to do at the end of the season? Because if he's right there at 6-6, like, do we really want to do this again? But at the same time, if you're at 7-5 with a freshman quarterback or a redshirt sophomore quarterback, like, there could be some excitement, and you really do start to feel like maybe we are past all of this, the portal and all of whatever's happened, and now we can start building. So it'll be interesting to see.
Does it matter which 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can lose to Pitt.
I have a notion for you. What if Neil ends his time at WVU as having a winning record versus Virginia Tech, Penn State, and Oklahoma?
And never beat Texas Tech.
And never beat Texas Tech. That would be the most Neil thing I can think humanly possible, is to like somehow find a way to like out-coach James Franklin, which really a toddler should be able to do. God, I'm gonna be so mad when we lose that game like 34-17.
Whatever.
There's a real chance that could have a curse score too. Like, there's a real chance that could be like a 13-9 score.
That score doesn't exist and is impossible to occur.
All right. So, anybody have anything else they want to add? Thoughts, opinions, predictions on the 23 season from very afar, from February? There are a lot of things that are going to happen that we don't even know yet before they kick off in at Penn State this year. So anything?
I just want to say that you set the bar at 75 minutes, and we have blown right by that. So, despite our best intentions,
never doubt. Well, we had a nice little round table, so lots of viewpoints coming in tonight.
I mean, and it was in good shape until we mentioned the 3 straight wins. Never happened.
We're actually going to go 8-4 with just we'll win 2 and lose 1. We'll do that 4 times and get to 8-4.
I'm completely cool with that.
I would kill for 9 wins. I think we would all feel so much better about this program if we could just not.
I'd feel better about the world if we could win 9 games one time.
Not so much on the 23 season, but I will say having Cincinnati in and having a close road game is exciting for 24.
Yeah.
Finally getting a game where we can drive to middle of the season and go see somebody and not have to fly everywhere. So I'm excited to have Cincinnati back in conference and just get something that's a little bit closer, and we'll kind of go from there.
Agreed.
Yeah, cheers to that. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, thank you guys for listening. You can find us on Smoking Musket and all over Twitter. Follow at Smoking Musket on the Twitter account, and we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Take care, guys.
Yep.